Deaths from drug overdoses have jumped in nearly every county across the United States, driven largely by an explosion in addiction to prescription painkillers and heroin. These two maps, which were in a New York Times story last week, show the surge in overdose deaths from across the nation between 2003 and 2014. Fueling the increase, more deaths from prescription painkiller overdoses. In 2014, 317 Minnesotans died from these overdoses. That's more than died by homicide. Here in Minnesota, the nonprofit Steve Rummler Hope Foundation is leading the fight to raise awareness about opiate addiction. Lexi Reed Holtum, the executive director of that foundation, joins us now. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about the statistic of how many people are vulnerable to possibly having a problem here.
Right. So as high as 1/3 of the people who are prescribed painkillers, opioids, have an abuse problem with those prescription pain pills.
That's 1/3 of everybody.
Right.
And how do you know if you might be in that 1/3, or is it just sort of happens?
There's a lot of telltale signs, but really what we need to have happen to affect this overdose epidemic that our country is facing is we need our prescribers to be educated about addiction and about how to more safely treat pain. We had some 47,000 overdose deaths from drugs in our country in 2014. 28,000 plus of those were from opioids.
Now, Steve Rummler was your fiance.
Correct.
Is his story, if you can share his story about his descent into addiction?
Right. So Steve had a back injury that led him to be treated with painkillers that he legitimately was prescribed. Very shortly after he was prescribed them, he escalated in use and then slipped into the disease of addiction. We have, Steve wasn't alone. He was highly educated. He was a very successful businessman. He was kind of a go-to person in the community. He had a large, loving family. He was well educated. He had many advantages in life. So this disease that we're seeing, the addiction to opioids and the disease of addiction itself, is a non-discriminatory, non-biased, equal opportunity disease. And right now in our country, we have 1.9 million Americans addicted to opioids.
Right. In terms of his addiction, and he fought it, he went to treatment, but in the end, when he couldn't get the pills, he turned to heroin and overdose and died. Right. Is this something that happens to other people, a pathway to heroin abuse?
Yes, 4 out of 5 heroin users started by misusing prescription pain pills. So that's a tremendous figure. When we look at the statistics, we see that absolutely the fueling overdose death rate in our country is from prescription painkillers.
Who is affected here? Is this affecting all ages and all races and all sort of socioeconomic groups?
It is, and well, surprisingly, there is one demographic that's being more impacted than others, and that is non-Hispanic white Americans. So we have seen that every age group under the age of 65, the death rate is either flat or it's increasing. Other demographics or other races, it is going down, but with particularly ages 23 to 65, that or 23 to 54, we see increasing rates of overdose death from opioids, from prescriptions.
All right. Well, we have a link on our website to the Steve Rummler Hope Foundation, which has information for everybody really who's concerned about this problem. It is a growing problem here in Minnesota. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.